Double check that it's working. Okay, there we go. All right. No viewers yet, but we've got it going. Here, I'll put this as the background so everyone can look at it. All right, we've got some people trickling in. It looks like Sam and I were just talking about the standings. For those who want to take a look, I've got them up here on the screen. We were saying that we could very easily be seeing the crowning of Deep Finesse as the TMTL back-to-back champion today. If he wins, obviously he clinches the league. Also, if he gets second to anything other than a Nerd Cube win, he clinches. And even third, if Simon wins, I think would be enough for him to clinch too. So there's a lot of scenarios that would work out for Deep Finesse, basically, as long as he doesn't get last, which I think all of us would be pretty surprised if he got last.
And would this be the three-peat? Is this back to back to back if Deep Finesse takes it?
Oh, it might be. I actually don't know. I didn't play last season, and so I didn't follow very closely. But I think he won last season, right?
Yeah. I think it's the three-peat if he takes it here. Someone in the chat will let us know if we're wrong.
I'm sure. Well, it'll be fun. But there's also the battle for relegation, which is important too. Rafa, it's his bye today, and he's got the fewest points. So Simon or Jekyll with a win today would secure not finishing in last place, guaranteed.
Totally right, and that's a spicy battle. Rafa's going to want to have a big win next week to be able to secure his position in the Premier League next season.
Oh, although actually,
I'm
no,
looking,
you know
I'm
what?
looking for the outside chance of NerdCube getting 2 wins here. A win this week, a win next week.
That would be quite impressive. Although I just remembered, I think with the Premier League, I assume there must be 2 relegations, right? Because there's a promotion from both America and from Europe.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah. So
well, that makes it extra spicy then.
Yeah, so Jekyll and Simon really want a positive result today to get away from those bottom couple spots. So just as interesting, maybe even more interesting there than at the top. Let's see if they've got this game formed yet. Not yet, it looks like.
We've got There's Life Jim in the chat after his massive Witches game last night on Fjords, picking up 163 points.
Oh, wow.
To tie, to draw with, I think it was it Glummy? In the true Premier League, the New Zealand division. So that was a big game from There's Life Jim. Last night, this morning for Super.
For the rest of us. And Super, you just went through a 3-hour mega cast, right? I realize you've got it's I don't know if you know about NFL Red Zone, but in the States, NFL Red Zone is every Sunday. They broadcast all of the NFL games at the same time on this channel, and you going back and forth across all those European games reminds me it's like the same thing. It's pretty fun to watch. All right.
So do we have
here we go. I think we have a game. Oh no, I don't want to join the game. I want to watch the game. Looks like they're just forming it, so let's go ahead and play the reel. If it works. Well, maybe not.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to roll! Y'all ready for this?
right, so now we can officially welcome everyone to week 4 of this season of the TMTL. MattTheLesser here with Jay the Kiwi. We're just going to go by Matt and Sam. And it's Rafa's bye week, so we've got Simon, Jekyll, Deep Finesse, and Nerd Cube, and they just started the game, so let's take a look at the track. I apologize, I don't have super fancy overlays. So if you want to see something as the game goes along, just mention it in the chat, and we're happy to scroll around. Sam, you want to talk about the track we've got here?
Yeah, so looking at the scoring track, it's looking like a really, really low scoring track. We have towns in round 1 that pretty much no one can do. And then looking at round 6, we have big buildings, which is typically not super high scoring. And we have back-to-back trading post rounds in round 4 and 5. So it looks like round 3 is going to be where people are wanting to do like a dwelling rush, that sort of thing. But the pass tiles are looking relatively high scoring. We've got 3 out of the 4 scoring pass tiles in the game. The track also doesn't have any coins available, but we've got the 6 coin tile in the game, so I'm wondering how the coins are going to break down this game.
Yeah, there's a decent number of coins on the pass tiles. I did get a comment about headphones. Is the audio okay for everyone, or are we having feedback issues? Just before we get too far. Seems better? Okay. All right. Let me know if it keeps going. So as far as coins, yeah. So we're missing the 4 coins in a cult step, and no coins on the round track. So not a ton of coins, but the 6 coin tile is there. So it'll depend a little bit on the factions that have gotten thrown in. We do have fakirs and mermaids thrown in already, which is interesting. I kind of agree with fakirs here, given the lack of the temp ship tile and relatively low scoring game. Makes a lot of sense to have a faction with some inherent scoring. We're also missing, from a scoring perspective, only the TP scoring tile, so which is kind of the one that most factions have the hardest time taking advantage of, at least early in the game. So I agree, Sam. Like decent scoring on the track, and also as I Super just pointed out in the chat, we've got the distant SH distance extra scoring tile from the Fire and Ice scoring, which is really interesting here, especially with the big building scoring in round 6. So those can go together quite well, as even factions that may not want some of those big buildings are happy to build them late in the game.
Yeah, and with it being in round 6, we might see a little game of chicken here, where people delay and delay and delay and wait to see where the other factions are going to place their second big building before they lock it in. And it is interesting with the round 2 big building, because players could start a stronghold in that round and sort of reveal half of their plans for the distance. Often they'll be placed in the middle of the map where all the leech is going to be, but then that kind of cuts out your potential to have an extra long distance. So it'd be interesting to see if people do take advantage of that, because we've got the big building tile in the game. So if you don't build any of your big buildings to the last round, then you're not going to be able to utilize the scoring that is so lovely from that tile.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a little bit of it would just depend on which factions get thrown, right? So we've had Fakirs, Mermaids, and now Deep Finesse just threw in Halflings. So interestingly, these are all 3 factions that don't really frequently want their big buildings early in the game, particularly Mermaids and Halflings. Fakirs will sometimes want an early Sanctuary, so we could potentially see that in round 2 instead of, for example, a second Temple. But I think we're going to see a lot of round 6 big buildings with the factions that we've seen here. So that'll be really interesting. And Fire and Ice, as you said, is a one where people can really stretch to those corners. So we may see a full distance take the win here on that scoring tile. And Engineers is the last faction thrown in here by Nerd Cube, also one that doesn't necessarily need early big buildings. So round 6 is going to be really spicy.
Yeah, totally. And I tend to think that these Fire and Ice scoring opportunities, they really favor factions that are going to abuse shipping, factions that are often quite networky factions. And we see some chat going around with Jekyll having a dig at Deep Finesse, saying, "Why think so long if you're going to just put in halflings anyway?" Of course, Deep Finesse is a renowned halflings player, very, very strong halflings. But the interesting thing with halflings is that their stronghold isn't the best building in the game. I think that's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
And with this scoring, you really do want to build that stronghold. Do we know if landscapes are on in this game?
I actually didn't notice in the setup, so we will have to see when
it is on.
It is on. Okay, there we go. So I think that obviously helps Fakirs quite a bit, brings down halflings a little bit. I haven't seen a huge use of the engineers landscape on this map in particular because most of their hexes are on the river, although I could see something like... Actually, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a creative one off the top of my head, and I'm not really seeing it. So maybe it's not, but we do see engineers getting bid most right out the gate, which makes a lot of sense. Scoring aside, they're very strong on this map. They have no color neighbors, and the ship scoring tile is in the game, so they should have a natural time doing pretty well here. I think halflings, in my opinion, would probably be the 30 faction here. They have a neighbor, but as you said, they're not so great on the big building scoring tile because they don't want to build that stronghold. Their landscape is not particularly good, and they just don't have a ton going from on the track. There's no spade scoring or anything like that. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. But what do you think about this particular set of factions?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be mermaids as the lowest faction. They love shipping. They've got shipping scoring. I think they're going to be able to do a really good job of the stronghold sanctuary distance. They're not going to want to build either of those structures early, so they might just try and save up their resources for both of them in the last round, where they've got a little bit of time to adapt to what other players are doing. They often just have such an explosive start here. The other interesting thing is that we have 3 factions that start with 9 power in Bowl 2, and we've only got 2 pass tiles that give 3 power. So there might be a little bit of a double spade pressure here. Mermaids could well lose it if engineers and halflings try to grab that power. But I don't know, with engineers having the option to take the spade tile, we might see that mermaids will end up with the ship scoring and the double dig action. Yeah. If we even think double dig is contested here, what do you think, Matt?
I think it's unlikely that 2 factions pass the spade tile. I think the engineers will probably just take it, and the halflings will then probably just take worker power, and then
worker power.
Yeah, and then which leaves mermaids with the ship power tile, and fakirs. God, if that happens, they love it.
Priest.
Because they get the priest, so right? They're thrilled with that as a first, especially in first seat. So I think that's good. I think the interesting one to me here is going to be the starting positions, in particular engineers, right? They probably start on either E5 or G8, and then H5 is pretty typical on this map. And then the question for me is whether halflings come down and join them in that area down in H4, which makes it really hard to connect and doesn't have that nice northwest to southeast sort of shipping lane that Brown really likes on this map. But giving them the neighbors, otherwise there's a lot of nice hexes down there. Like, I think that's going to have a big impact on this game. I assume mermaids will start D6, F5, and fakirs C5, and then, I mean, depending on where everyone else places, they could go down to I4 or G2, or they could go to D4, which is probably more standard, and they'll probably get a D5 neighbor pretty soon.
The more I look at this, the more I think that halflings and fakirs are just going to get in each other's way. Yep. Like, they both want each other's hexes. So it's going to be interesting to see if they decide, let's grab leech off each other and help each other out. Or actually, I want to stay as far away from you as possible and make sure I can secure my own hexes from my own town spaces. Because H4 would be lovely if halflings can take I4, I5, I6, or even H3, G2. But fakirs could stop both of those things, so it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. it'll the D8 will be a question, right? Will halflings start on D8? That's a pretty typical starting spot for brown on this map, but given no red and no green means you're getting a lot fewer neighbors than you normally get on the spot, and it's a good spot to ship from, but not a good spot to dig from. There's no temp ship, so unless halflings are planning on investing a lot in shipping early, which normally is valuable on this map, it's just very expensive. Like, we'll see. I mean, I think that dwelling scoring around in round 3 is going to be important. I think a faction that does well here is going to be able to get out a lot of dwellings in that round.
And we also have There's Life Jim calling out, well, who's getting the big building tile? You know, like all these other factions, these 3 factions wanting digs, wanting power. Does that go to fakirs? Would that be crazy? Could they just start double temple then, instead of grabbing the priest?
They certainly could. I think it depends on what they're trying to do for round 1 and whether they have neighbors, right? Like if they end up starting on D4, they may not have a neighbor immediately, depending on where mermaids are going to have a lot of options with that double dig that we're assuming that they're getting. So if they don't come to D5, then maybe fakirs play it safe. I think also that big building is more valuable in round 2, so it wouldn't shock me if it didn't get taken here. I could also see the halflings taking the big building tile and saying, I'm not going to get double dig anyways. Maybe I'll try to open double. Maybe I'll try to open double temple so that I can have priest production to get my shipping up. Like, especially if someone like Nerdcube lands on the halflings. I mean, I kind of assume Deep Finesse will, but if Nerdcube ends on the halflings, I'd actually start to be surprised if it wasn't double temple.
So we see Deep Finesse jumping to fakirs here, and we know that he's inevitably going to end up on halflings. So he's just bringing them down a little bit, you know. I think there's going to be a fair bit more bidding to go. To me, it doesn't look like a great halflings game, but I imagine that Deep Finesse has a plan in mind that other people won't see or they won't value as highly as he does. I might be wrong here. Yeah, we're going to see.
Yeah, I mean,
Jekyll jumps onto engineers down to 17, mermaids down to 13.
I mean, how low do you think mermaids should go here?
My gut instinct is somewhere around 8 to 10 VP.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I'm actually surprised. I don't think engineers goes that much further. I mean, I think they're in a good color wheel, and the late TP rounds they might be able to take advantage of a little bit better than everybody else. But this map is just, you know, it's really rough for them. But I guess without red or green and no neighbors, I mean, they might be able to do something. Like if they can cut through the middle there, something like E5, E4, and get to D7 before the fakirs, something like that, they could get into a nice spot. G6 for engineers is a really, really key hex on this map, so they're going to want to beat mermaids to that.
Yeah, so fascinating. And I think another thing which makes auction particularly hard is this fire and ice scoring. You know, my friend said today that in the rule book for fire and ice, they say that auction should start at 40 points, just because the swing is that much higher. We don't see that implemented in BGA. So, you know, we could even see a faction go down to 0. I don't think it's going to happen today, but you know, the playtesters and the designers thought, actually, you probably want to have a 40-point buffer rather than a 30-point buffer for some of those really big disparities in faction strength with that tile.
Huh, I haven't heard that one, actually. That's very interesting. I mean, I can certainly see theoretical setups where 30 points is insufficient. I don't think this is one of them, just because, as you pointed out at the very top, the track scoring is not that high. And so I think the overall, even with the extra scoring, I don't think we're going to see a score in like the 180s today, for example. So partially too, because these players are so good that they will, you know, reel in leaders if they get too far out in advance. But yeah, I think something in the 20 plus range is easily viable here today from mermaids.
And we see Fakirs have gone as low as 24. I do quite like Fakirs, especially with the landscape. It makes it pretty nice for them to get coins like quite easily. They've got a good source of coins when really it's just the 6 coin pass tile as the main source of coins for everyone else and the coin action. So yeah, 24 points. Will we see it go lower? Will we see it drop below 20?
I think we will. I think we will. Oh, you mean on Fakirs? Maybe not. I don't know. Around 20, maybe 21, 22 is probably where I would view them relative to halflings. I do think that the upside for Fakirs is pretty high here. If we get the H4, H5, I4 start for those 3 factions, and Fakirs can start there and also start C5 and find a way to connect, right? The connection there becomes a little bit tenuous, but if they can find a way to connect, it's pretty natural to have that sanctuary town down there in the south, and you can throw the stronghold in round 6 up there in the north. That's a pretty good sanctuary stronghold distance. Now, halflings and mermaids on the other two on the opposite diagonals have much more natural paths to a long one, so they could certainly get beat out there. But Fears at least have a play, right? And this map is generally good for them. Plus, with the landscapes, obviously helps Fakirs a ton. So.
Yeah, and the other thing to consider with Fakir's network and their connection, we might see Fakirs with the mad hops this game, considering that they're going to be building the stronghold most likely, and if they take one of those extension towns, we might see a 3-range Fakirs game, which all of a sudden makes connection quite trivial, you know?
Yeah.
You've got 3 range on your carpet flights.
Yeah,
so I think that might be quite fun to see.
Absolutely could, yeah. This is definitely a game and a map where that's possible. Now, one thing we haven't talked about at all really is the cults here. We have 4 very non-cult factions. Fakirs obviously want to use their priests for flying. Engineers start with no cult steps, and their second temple doesn't generate a priest. Mermaids and halflings can play culty, but obviously we talked about shipping being pretty important probably in this game toward getting out to those extremities for the extra scoring. So we might see some relatively low cult scoring here. Although there are some nice rewards. We have 3 spades and then a double fire, which is obviously the worst cult to have double on, but you know, double's still good. So what do you think about what's going to happen there?
Yeah, I think the 4 power for 4 fire steps is significantly better earlier in the game. So I think that's still coming at a point where players are wanting tempo on the coins action, they're wanting tempo on the double dig. They don't have too many trading posts out, so they're not going to be overproducing power. So I think an early priest to fire to get the 3 spot, to get 2 workers, 4 power, it would be quite nice. And then the other cults, yeah, we've got a bunch of spades, but I don't see that as super appealing. Although this is quite a spade contested map, right? Like they're going to be wanting to get in each other's way. So yeah, if we see double temple for Fakirs in round 1, which is quite possible, if they end up with those neighbors, we could see them throwing priests, which isn't something they normally want to do. They normally want to do flights, but if they're producing 2 priests around, then they can throw a few nice and easy and not feel that too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on, I mean, it's interesting because we don't really have anyone who, Fakirs we talked about maybe might be the ones who end up with the round 1 priest. Although Brown Earth is like the only cult that people kind of have some natural inclination toward here. Halflings start on it. Engineers typically take bonus or favors that go toward it. So we'll see if someone's able to find that round 1 spade. And we do have a game now. So we've got Nerdcube finished on Mermaids with 13, Jekyll on Engineers with 15, a much smaller gap than I probably would have guessed between those two. Deep Finesse 22 on Fakirs, and Simon, as we expected, jumps to the 30 faction Halflings.
Yeah, so I was totally wrong about Deep Finesse inevitably ending up on Halflings. I called that wrong. Whose position do you like here, Matt, just off the option? Or do you want to wait till we've seen the starting dwellings?
We can see the starting dwellings, but I like Nerdcube's position a lot. I mean, I
Yeah.
think this is, despite the fact that they were the most expensive faction, I think he got a good deal. I
Yeah.
just don't see what's really going to slow down Mermaids in this game. He's going to start. He already placed F5. Almost certainly his other dwelling is going to be D6. If he gets double dig in round one like we expect, and he takes, for example, C4 D9 as an example, he's already connected. No one's going to challenge him heading down to the southeast to H2, or sorry, southwest H2 ultimately for that distance. He can build both his big buildings in round 6. I think the game plan lays out really nicely here, and it's hard for me to see how he gets messed up. But with these players, I'm sure they'll find a way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, the H2, A10. If he can swing that, that'd be awesome. And he knows with A10 that he's going to get a neighbor there eventually, right? A9 is too juicy for fakirs most likely, but also for halflings.
Absolutely. And if fakirs don't get up there, halflings will get on B7, no doubt. Or even, fakirs, God forbid, they leave alone B6. Halflings would love to grab that. Because that's the one thing that's interesting about halflings, especially if they start. I expect they're going to start H4 given the placements we've already seen. But even if they want to eventually get to C3 for that connection, they need one more hex in there somewhere. Because C3 to D8 is 4 ship, which obviously they can't get to. So this is interesting. I do think the D8 placement is really nice for engineers, having 2 neighbors, and if Simon starts on H4 here as he's contemplating, he's got double neighbors in both spaces, so that's pretty nice. I mean, if he takes the spade, he can build on E4 in round 1. Yep, and there's H4. So I don't hate this setup for E5. Now that's an interesting one. Nerdcube goes on G4 instead of D6 to join this Southern Leash party, but potentially a little bit problematic for connection. I guess he just needs F4 now, which isn't under huge threat yet.
Yeah, and you gotta love this for engineers. Like, they are going to be getting a lot of leech. Sure that actually often they do quite like to double dig that G4 hex to get G3 and get them access to the west, but they're at the center of both of the leech triangles. Even though they're in the 4th seat and they can't dictate where the triangle's going to be, they know that they're going to be getting a ton of leech here.
Yeah, absolutely. And G5 is not under any pressure unless fakirs try to do something really wonky. So and same with E4. So their connection shouldn't be an issue. The biggest problem engineers are going to face is that other than G8 and F6, they don't have a lot of natural grays that are easy access to, as you mentioned, with G4, and then therefore the west kind of getting cut off. So that'll be interesting. Maybe they can get up through E2.
So we see that halflings decided that they didn't want to take the worker power tile, and they've gone for big building instead. Is this looking like a double temple halflings game? And also mermaids are looking really, really nice without having to take that ship scoring tile to get double dig. So they get the extra worker that they would love to have, which is basically another dwelling.
Absolutely. Mermaids are going to get to open Temple 4 dwellings here, which is really nice. Halflings, yes, I fully expect this is double temple, and I think that we'll probably see that parlayed into a shipping, pretty early advancing shipping, and that's how he's going to try to get a bunch of dwellings down.
So we might see a fire 1 take from halflings here.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. He could either go fire 1 for the coins that he will certainly need, or he could try to go Earth 2, Earth 1, which would give him enough cult steps to get that spade. So it'll just be wondering what he values more.
I think we're going to see the priest take from halflings on their turn.
Yeah, that would allow him to get fire 1 then without having to take Earth 2 or Earth 1, whatever one he doesn't want.
What do we think about Deep Finesse's starting positions here? C5, I4. I guess that's relatively expected.
Yeah, it's pretty much what I expect. I mean, I think he will now need, if he wants a southern town, he obviously will need a double spade, but I5, engineers aren't pressuring that, so he should be okay there, and then can either sanctuary town, or if he also digs I3 or builds a bridge, so that's pretty flexible. I think he probably is, B6 is going to be under pressure probably by round 2, so he's going to need to claim that. The interesting thing for him here is the center's wide open, and so I wonder if he almost tries to push through. I've seen it done with nomads, not so much with fakirs pushing through D7 E3 as a method of connecting.
Yeah, that's a really cool point. Yeah. It looks like that D7 hex is not under immediate pressure, but eventually engineers would like it, eventually halflings would like it, and also potentially fakirs would like it too. So
Yeah.
we'll see if anyone actually wants to try and apply pressure for the race for that hex. Deep Finesse is having a big think here.
Yeah, I think Deep Finesse, one thing he needs to consider this round is whether he's using that priest for a flight or whether he's going to try to send it to a cult. And that might be
Right.
related to his decision of whether to open double temple. Because if he takes the worker's action, he can still open double temple, send that priest to Earth if you assume one of his... but no, he didn't. So he went for the single spade, obviously thinking that I3 was a crucial hex for him, which makes sense. It's kind of his early access to the west and cuts halflings off a little bit. So we'll see now if he uses that. I mean, he still could potentially send the priest to a cult, but definitely not a double temple open with claiming that spade.
And interestingly, he decided not to put his landscape down. So he's deciding, yep, I want to get some worker income this round. But he's not going to get 2 coins off that first flight, I imagine.
Yeah, that seems certainly to be the case. I think with the fakirs, generally, it's an interesting decision of whether or not to throw the landscape down. I think it's actually less about the coins and more whether you want to use that worker for something else. Like I'll see people throw the landscape down when they think they can open double temple with the landscape. And that's potentially still in the cards for Deep Finesse. I mean, he's got another 5 power coming from those temple upgrades in the south, and another one. So he actually could still... Well, no, he's not getting enough coins. So maybe not.
And we saw that Simon decided not to grab the priest and not to apply pressure on Earth 1. Although I'm not sure Earth 1 is super great in a game with the extra scoring in it. And Jekyll has scooped up the priest.
Yeah, that's a nice little coup for Jekyll, who certainly will take at least one of the Earth favors, and therefore she should be able to grab the spade bonus now pretty easily.
And it's pretty crazy. Like it looks like she hasn't spent any power. She just took a priest, and now she's got 10 power in bowl 2, which is lovely.
And still her bonus spade in hand also. So yeah. This is opening up very nicely.
And if you were Jekyll here, would you be putting your spade on E4 to go for an eventual D7, or would you be putting it on G5?
That's a great question. I think I would probably be going for E4, just to, as you said, put pressure on D7. I think that the reason you would go for G5 is if you thought you really needed G6. Obviously,
right.
If the mermaids get another ship, then they threaten G6, and that would be a nice hex for them because it would give access to H6 and then I7 with 2 ships. But with this particular setup as engineers, you have E2 as an out for your town. And so losing G6 in this particular scenario actually isn't disastrous. And so I think trying to see if you can get that town in the middle secured is more important. And I actually...
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because E5 would be quite stranded and lonely if they don't take E4. Usually engineers bridge over to D9, but Nerdcube's already taken that. So then they're going to need to, fork a way out of this place. And we've got Onda saying in the chat that everyone's an artist now, because fakirs have gone a bit fancy with the Air 2 take.
Oh, yeah. We haven't... I was just about to scroll down and look at this. So we've had 3 income favors taken with the first 3 pulls. So Mermaids took Fire 1, which we know is very good for them. Fakirs for Air 2, and Halflings have taken Earth 2, and now Engineers take Earth 2. So we go 4 for 4. I do think Halflings will probably take Earth 1 with their second one, both for Earth 1 being great and also to get that spade. But I think especially with the extra scoring in the game, everyone recognizes that the extra economy is more important than the scoring. And D-Finesse does pass first, so he's opened up. He did do a flight, opens up Temple 3 dwellings, and now passes onto the 6 coin tile. So he's pretty well set up for next round. Once the halflings upgrade that H4 into their second temple, then D-Finesse will have enough power to take Act 6 in round 2 if he wants, which is very good for him. I think it'll be interesting to see where he puts those spades. He certainly has some options. He could double spade either H3 or I5 to get through to the yellows on the other sides of those, or he could go like D7, B7, or even A7. So lots of options there.
Yeah, so many options. I was going to say I like the I5 for the landscape the most because that looks like a nice little town down there. And then he can still fly out to G2, A9 to try and get the tempo in E1. E1 looks like quite an important hex for, well, actually both Halflings and Fakirs, because all of a sudden Halflings connection is looking pretty dicey. It's really looking dicey.
I mean, if Fakirs take H3 here, then it's just the H4 is just getting abandoned, I think. I mean, I guess long term you could potentially triple dig G3. They will upgrade their spade before the end of the game, but yeah. But let's just talk about this. So Simon just took, and chat was actually forecasting this against what we were talking about. Simon took Fire 1 with his second temple, so he gives up the Cult Spade, which, when you look at it, actually kind of makes sense, because if he throws it on H3, which is really the only natural place to do it, then it gets dug out anyways. You can't throw it on D7 because you'd turn it to yellow, so the spade doesn't really help, and so he goes big econ here, and he's clearly just going to go for getting shipping and spreeing some dwellings as quickly as possible.
And shipping looks pretty essential for Halflings in this game, so I like that. And looking over at Jekyll's resources, has she even spent any this round? She's got 6 coins, 4 workers, 3 power in bowl 3, still got a spade in hand, so we're going to see another...
We're going to see another temple and a dwelling, almost certainly.
It's so filthy. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So it's really a very nice spot.
And a Cult Spade incoming, man.
Yeah.
This is a powerful game from Jekyll here.
Yeah. The power of early leech, right? Being able to start in the middle there, and get all of that in addition to the spade bonus. We do see her go for E4 right here, which we were speculating about. I think that makes a lot of sense. Basically secures the connection since G5 is not under any threat, and has the nice added bonus of her being able to upgrade this second temple away from Nerd Cube. It's only a little bit of power denial, but a little bit matters a lot in games like this.
And now we have to ask the question, when do people take Earth 1? Are we going to see Sanctuaries for Earth 1 next round? Is there going to be a little mini race for Earth 1 before the round 3 dwelling round?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, I don't think we see it from Halflings. I think he doesn't have the workers to afford it. D-Finesse could, but it's pretty hard for me to see him passing the option for double spade here. Nerd Cube maybe is the one, but he doesn't have enough coins right now. He needs a little bit of leech to hopefully get the coin action. And actually, that's this Jekyll E4. It's not just when I said a little bit matters. Yeah, first of all, Jekyll takes air too, so we've got two double econs here, and 2 single econs, no scoring favors. So we're gonna see some really big footprints here in this game.
What I like about it is, often engineers will take double dig in the first round, and they'll only have 6 power left, and so air 2 would be completely overkill. But Jekyll's got 11 power still floating around in her bowls, so she can actually handle having the 10 power income, and then late game obviously it's going to be increased with the TPs. So I really like this play. It'll be interesting to see if she's still going to be able to get Earth 1. Building a Sanctuary next round for Earth 1 would seem like quite quite overkill. Like, it would be quite a tall strategy, because Engineers Sanctuaries has got to be one of the worst buildings in the game.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think much more likely from Jekyll, if she's really interested in a favor, I think we'd see another temple before we saw a sanctuary, just because it's cheaper. But I think that doesn't happen this round. I think that happens in round 3, or potentially even waits till round 4, skips Earth 1 and just goes for Earth 2.
Yeah,
she does throw the Cult Spade on D7. Which, carving up that middle. And the thing is, now once she builds on D7, assuming Deep Finesse doesn't do something crazy like double dig it right here, she's going to get through to C4 too, which opens up A5. And I mean, this is like Engineer's problem in this game is they typically get trapped in this sort of center southwest area, or sorry, southeast area. And man, it's like this is so nice, so rare for Engineers on this map. It reminds me of that Fire 2 Open game where Chickens just lived over in the west by himself. It's just nice to see something different from a Grey faction on this map.
Yeah, totally. And usually we see D6, D7, E3, that being where all the structures start, right? With blue,
exactly.
red, and black, and none of that has been contested. So that's really cool to see something different here.
Yeah, this is.
And look at Simon with 11 power in Bowl 3.
Yeah, and Nerdcube is really sad right here because that upgrade that we talked about of Jekyll on E4 as opposed to E5 prevented him potentially, not necessarily saying that he would, but potentially getting the coins action this round, which I think he would have really wanted. That would have made a Sanctuary potentially viable here for him, whereas now instead, Simon may take the coins action. I mean, even though he's producing a bunch of coins, if he wants to go double ship upgrade, which I think he does, he's going to need that many more coins. And, if he double ship upgrades and builds B7, E6 this round, he's okay. I still think that H4 likely getting stranded down here could be problematic. But we also should mention that Deep Finesse decided to open not with double dig as we were expecting, but rather sent a Priest of Fire for that double benefit. So that Act 6 is still sitting there.
I think this is a really heads-up play from Deep Finesse because I think he's going to have his cake and eat it too. He's noticed that halflings don't really want to take a double dig here, so they took coins. And then where would Jekyll be putting her second spade if she takes double dig?
She wouldn't.
And she'd have no coins. So he's probably going to be able to get both things that he wants. Reading the table really nicely here.
Yeah, and Jekyll instead just sends Priest to air and is now leading on 2 of those cults. As we mentioned, these aren't a ton of cult factions, although we did see a bunch of temples in round 1, so it might get a little more competitive than we originally thought. But those 3 steps are going to be valuable, and now I do think we'll see the double dig from Deep Finesse. I'm guessing H3 or I5, but we'll see.
Probably won't see a Fakir's flight until round 3, which isn't expected, but it's cool to see a little bit more of a culty emphasis, especially with the stacking of the fire rewards.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he did the one in round 1 to get to B6.
And he's milking it even further. Does he not want the double dig?
Well, I think he just realizes that
here.
Engineers are still not really able to take it unless she wants to throw. I guess she could do something like transform H6 to green and with the assumption that she could pick it up later. But no one else really wants it. I mean, Halflings literally has nowhere to go. And Nerdcube doesn't have enough power. So...
And Simon's basically said, what's better than 2 priests? 3 priests.
Yeah. Well, we may see a triple ship upgrade now. And the worker action's still there. I mean, if Simon can get the worker action too, he could triple ship upgrade and still build 3 dwellings. He'd have enough coins for 3 dwellings, maybe 4 if he gets a little bit more leech, and he would have access to the browns, all those ones in the east. So, I mean, it's a bit of a weird footprint to be building off of, but at least would his economy, 2 temples and 4 dwellings after round 2 is great.
Yeah, the power of double econ. Love to see it. And he's on the ship scoring. You might have just said that, but.
Oh, I did not notice that. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah, grab some points while you're at it. These halflings are alchemists.
We do see deep finesse take the double dig. Just turns I5 brown.
Yeah.
And grabs the landscape on B7. I really like that play.
Yeah, so he needed to protect B7 from the halflings, as we were just talking about. Simon's about to upgrade his ship a bunch,
Yep.
and B7 would have gotten snagged, and he kind of needs it for a town. Deep finesse does, so makes sense to grab that now. He can throw I5 to Brown without any danger of it getting taken by anyone else, and so it does. I mean, halflings does with that threat. Leaves H3 to fight another day if he ever wanted to try to get it. It would still require, I mean, I assume Deep Finesse will still ultimately get G2, meaning halflings would still ultimately have to triple dig G3 if you wanted to build a town down there, but at least it leaves it viable, or at least could just connect ultimately through D1. It'll be interesting to see if we get the halflings trying to grab A7 pretty soon. I'm thinking next round potentially. If he's able to do that, then he could actually get out and build C3 E1, get connected, because that's the big pressure that he's now facing.
Yeah, or we might see him try to threaten, because I imagine he's getting down to I8 this round. Try to threaten the H8 F7 stretch to come around to F4. That's another option. I know that's going to take a while, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I think less for F4 and more just that H7, H8, I8 is a nice potential town spot for halflings too. I mean, that's the thing when you do these strategies where you sort of spread out via shipping as opposed to digging around your initial hexes, is that your towns can end up in some pretty weird spaces. And that's true for, I mean, any faction on any map, really.
Right.
But normally you think of, I want to start somewhere where I can build a town around my current hex. But if you spread out instead, especially for a faction like halflings, where then you have a ton of dwellings and you want to upgrade your digging anyways, and so you do it, and all of a sudden it's like, well, where is there space around me? You just kind of wait for that to play out, and then that's where you end up building your towns.
So we see Nerd Cube pass onto the spade tile, which is lovely. I can imagine him spading something like B8, getting to A10. But what do we think about Nerd Cube's game here? He's obviously got a lot of dwellings out, which is great for economy. But I see that he's sort of on the fringes. He's on the outskirts. He's not going to be having too many neighbors in the game for those late TPs.
Yeah, absolutely. He's probably thinking of, oh man, this is like Mermaids on base map where I don't have any neighbors is the biggest problem they always face. I mean, he does have Fire 1. So he's going to have some coin economy. It wouldn't shock me if he took the coin action here too, just to really load up. And I think he'll be okay. I mean, everyone's going to be spreading out enough in this game, right? Like, halflings are going to build on E6 this round, and then he's got two nice neighbors right there. So I think the biggest thing is that Jekyll just taking C4 makes Mermaid's connection a lot more tenuous. He's now got to either double dig C3 or F4. I guess F4 isn't really under that much of a threat, but it's definitely more complicated than just digging C4. And also, he now has a little bit of a wonky town situation in the center here. So he can either have to try to dig E3, G6, and then sort of have one town there and then another one off of G4, or he could build a bridge and kind of combine all of that into one town. But then, as Mermaids, you do ideally want 3 towns. So it's interesting. But all of that said, I still like Nerdcube's position a lot here. He's just got a lot of places to expand. He was able to get back to D6. He's going to have a really nice town spot over in the east here. B8, A10 to ultimately potentially build a stronghold or a sanctuary up there for that distance. Competition is still going to be easy. I still think he's in a pretty good spot. But Jekyll's probably the opening who, from the beginning of the game, the biggest transformation of my thinking about her position. Outside of the auction, I'm not sure I would have thought, I thought engineers are in a great spot here, but getting this middle cut through all the way 4 structures is just beautiful. So strong. Yeah.
Exquisite play, and as people are talking about in the chat, she's got tempo on any town that she wants. If she wants to grab 2-key town, which looks super lovely this game with already 3 priests to the cults, so she's backed up the 2-key play. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that Deep Finesse decided not to build the dwelling on A9, instead builds the temple for Earth 1. And normally I say, early rounds, you build the dwellings, you get that extra econ, it's so nice. But with this Priest of Fire and the 2 worker incoming, and the dwelling round having a hex available to score that, this is looking great for Deep Finesse. He's also going to be able to do 2 flights. So I think he's going to be hitting this dwelling scoring beautifully this round, and his economy will be super strong after this.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing we also didn't mention last round is that Deep Finesse did build another temple and took a copy of Earth 1. So we did see finally an Earth 1 go. I imagine we're going to see more go this round before the dwellings get out. But yes, very nice spot for Deep Finesse also. So I mean, everyone has a coherent game plan here. I don't think anyone has really gotten blown up too much. Simon didn't get B7 obviously, but got his other 3 dwellings out. And so we're into it now, right? I mean, I think everyone's gonna be executing against the plans they've laid out. I still think we've still got a lot of action to come on the Sanctuary Stronghold situation. And I think one thing that's really interesting is when we see this many early temples, that really dictates where those sanctuaries can end up, right?
Totally.
And so, we see already, like, even the difference between, for example, I4 and H4 versus H5 and G4 could be a big impact if sanctuaries end up down there, ultimately heading up toward the northeast.
It's totally right. If engineers do this temple on E5 for Earth 1, which is what I think they're posturing to do this round, that means their sanctuary is going to have to be H5, most likely. And then where would the stronghold be? Something like A5, which is a good distance, but it's not the most explosive distance,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's there, or
F6.
F6, which is, I mean, that's only 7. That's not that far. So, I mean, given everything else Jekyll's got going this game, it's entirely possible that she's thought, what, that's a problem to deal with later, and or maybe I won't even bother, right? I mean, someone is probably not going to build both of the buildings, because if you realize you're going to get last on the distance anyways and you don't need it, like, none of these factions really need both buildings. So someone might decide, hey, I can compete better on network by just foregoing them entirely. So we'll see what decisions people come up with here, but I have to think that at least at this point in the game, all of them at least are hoping to score some points there.
It's a really good point, actually. Probably have 4 of the worst big building factions in the game. There's not really a good big building amongst them all, is there?
Yeah.
We've got the expensive mermaids and expensive mermaid sanctuary. We've got a really average engineer's sanctuary. Gross strongholds from halflings and fakirs, and the mermaid's stronghold isn't that much better.
Yeah, so one thing someone just pointed out in the chat, which is interesting, is that Simon elected to send a priest to water instead of upgrading his digging, which is certainly probably what I would have expected. It would have allowed him to at least build a couple dwellings this round. Whereas now, I mean, he might get 1 down with a single spade, but he's certainly farther away from potentially getting some dwellings down this round, which is, I think, a missed opportunity potentially.
Yeah, and I wonder if he's thinking, look, I've done these 2 temples round 1 and I've missed out on all of the 3 spots, so maybe I just want to jump in on this water 3 spot and get some cult points out of these double temples. Yes, the double temple did allow the shipping opening, but if he then goes into upping digs, he's spent 5 priests, and that's quite a lot. Yeah.
Well, and he did still, and his chat is pointing out too, he did up his digs once, and he can still build H3, and because he's at 3 shipping, build E1 and C3. So I guess he is still getting 3 dwellings out this round, which is probably about as many as he would have been able to do by upping his dig twice. So I guess I stand corrected in it being a hugely missed opportunity. It's really not.
And he's nearly done, when he gets the H3 E1 C3, he's nearly done the full loop, which is really cool to see. Like the full loop around from D8 all the way. Obviously not connected quite then, but he's pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah, once he has C3, he's close. Although, I mean, Fakirs potentially want A7, engineers potentially want. It's definitely not guaranteed, but certainly closer, as you said. And Fakirs do go ahead and grab G2. Not that that was unexpected, but does officially, sort of not close the door, but significantly hamper any halfling town divisions in the south. It's either going to be a triple dig on G3 now and a sanctuary or nothing. So just a little bit more of a wrench thrown into Simon's, at least the plans he probably thought he had at the beginning of the game. And Jekyll getting through to B5 here and now B4, I mean, just continues to expand. Got G5 as well. This footprint is incredible. Jekyll's going to end this round with 2 temples, a TP, and 6 dwellings, which for the end of round 3 is just pretty crazy.
It's filthy. It's so good. So good. Only 18 points.
That's true. So yeah. So I mean, one thing that's nice is she's got this TP standing, which means that at the beginning of round 4, she can very quickly throw that into a temple for Water 1, and have all of these dwellings very nicely positioned to absolutely go ham on the TP rounds. It's almost sad actually for her that they're back to back. She relatively would do better if it was only the round 4 one. Because she can take advantage of round 4 better than everyone else can, I think. Between round 4 and round 5, everyone else will probably be able to build all their TPs.
And I think this was a long time ago, but Nerdcube has taken Earth 1, so there's 1 copy left. I think that's pretty nice from Nerdcube, even though he had already put out quite a few dwellings. Still going to score that this round, still going to get out a lot more dwellings throughout the game. And he's going to be ending this round with all of his dwellings out.
Yeah,
which is some pretty big economy. And with Fire 1 in hand, helps to balance his economy a bit better.
Yeah, and has now, fully alleviated his neighbor problem that we were slightly speculating out for a second.
Yeah.
But... So who do you, I mean, so given the point, like, what's interesting is I think, like, I look at this map and I'm like, oh, Jekyll looks like she's an amazing spot. And then I look at the points and, 30-point difference over here to Simon. I mean, how do you think this is shaken out? Like, whose position do you like as we come to the end of round 3 here?
I really like Deep Finesse's position here. I think he's got the best of both worlds. He's got 45 points in hand, and he's got a pretty nice economy. And it looks like he's going to be able to connect this game. I think he should win the race to F4, unless Nerdcube goes for a double dig next round on that. And then that means his connection's sorted, because we know that he's going to be at least extending his range one time, and we can easily see 2 towns sussed. Though the E1 take from halflings does cut one of those potential towns, but he might not have wanted to do 2 bridge towns anyway. Halflings are on an amazing amount of points too. He really did abuse that ship scoring, and if Nerdcube doesn't grab it here, you imagine that halflings could just jump onto that ship scoring again.
Yeah, I mean, and as you're saying that, Nerdcube does pass. We're waiting on his selection, and he does not go, interestingly, with ship scoring. He goes with worker power. So it actually really wouldn't surprise me if Nerdcube did end up opening double dig on F4, because if he doesn't, his connection is really tenuous. He'd either have to get H8 I7, which halflings with soon to be full dig advance are gonna threaten, or a triple dig on G7, which is also pretty ugly. Which then brings us back to the point of Fakir's connection, who, assuming Nerdcube does that, then Deep Finesse has 2 options. He can either get to range 3, in which case he's got a couple different avenues to connect, or potentially try to grab E2 is the other
E2,
other spot. I mean, now Jekyll's probably interested in that as well, although unclear how much she'll prioritize it, given that she's going to want to wait for some Colt Spades to come up. Obviously now, to do any of that, Fakirs need 2 range, which they don't have. So now I think he'll probably get a town next round, dig I5 and get that and take a range town, but something to keep in mind in terms of some of the connection pressure that is starting to build here between with Fakirs and Mermaids particularly.
And don't you love to see a game of Terra Mystica with players of this caliber? It's just amazing to watch. It's so cool to see all the different lines and the creativity that's being expressed here. And the average elo at this table is 682. That is whopping. That's crazy.
That might be. I wonder if it's the highest ever. We'd have to for a 4-player game. We'd have to check it out. All right, so everyone is now passed now. Jekyll lands on that nice ship scoring tile, and Simon on dwelling. So he's just going to continue to rack up points here. So let's see what happens.
Newcube doesn't have the power to be able to double dig.
No,
we could see a single dig and hard dig on F4.
He'd have to double hard.
Or we could
dig.
just see coins. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see it. Okay.
No, yeah. So he actually single spades, and then hard digs 1. Yeah, which makes sense because he wants to keep some dwellings to build a couple TPs this round. And I assume Deep Finesse takes coins here. So yeah, Deep Finesse is probably okay with how that played out. It does seem like, especially given that there's the incentive to build the stronghold this game with the Sanctuary Stronghold scoring, it would not surprise me if Deep Finesse connects here via 3 distance. He just needs to get G7 and then he's got it. And so he'll probably take 1 town for a Fakir range, and then at the end of the game build the stronghold to do that connection.
Yeah.
The interesting thing for Fakirs, and the one thing that's a little threatening to his position here, is he's behind some tempo on D4, and Halflings really want it too because it enables them to get up to those natural browns A1 and A2, which, in addition to the loss of any natural yellow, which is bad for Fakirs, but also then it's the gateway prior to 3 range, which we expect he won't get until the end, to those other yellows in the northwest.
And we could, if we saw that, I would love to see the mad style points from Simon, just doing 2 expensive trading posts, I9, A1, to have the longest sash distance possible, A1 to I9. That would be really, really cool.
Certainly wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. We see here Jekyll's thinking quite a bit. I see she's got 11 power. Why not double dig? Is she wondering what to double dig? I just considered, G6, E2 would have been a nice take for her, secure another town. And what do we see? She's advanced her shipping to 2. So what's she trying to get access to? D3? Double dig D3, G6 maybe? That gets her access to the southwest, to G1, things like that.
Yeah, maybe. I think Jekyll's also would be very interested in A6, which would enable a 4-hex town in the north.
A6, A7 and the 1 dig.
Yeah, or not even A7 is actually less necessary. Still good, but probably less necessary. But A6 to enable at least a 4-hex town, because I think, as we said earlier, she probably wants to ultimately build that sanctuary on H5.
And I love these heads-up plays, people not panicking or stressing about taking double dig. We saw it from Deep Finesse earlier, and we see it from Jekyll here. She knows that no one else can take it, so do what she needs to do to get the most out of it. I would be stressing and just taking it as soon as it's available.
Yeah. The other thing, too, though, with Jekyll advancing ship, even though I'm not positive that A7 is what she wants, she does threaten the A6, A7 here, which would which puts halfling. You know, halflings are not actually connected yet. It looks like they are,
Right.
but we talked about this at the very beginning that C3 to D8 is actually 4. So he needs A6 or A7 now. If she did actually double dig those, I assume Simon would not have any issue just triple digging it back to claim his connection. So I think Jekyll will probably just dig A6 and D3 here, or A6 and
D3, yeah.
and one of those center ones. Okay, so Deep Finesse decides to connect through E3, which does secure his connection. It's a double dig for him to do it, and he had to, let's see, he did it with
Use the spade tile
and a hard dig. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe he's not going for G3, or sorry, for 3 distance. I mean, the nice thing about that is that the ship towns for Fakirs, while they're often so necessary for that distance, they also kind of suck. And like, if you can play a game without actually taking one, it's just so beneficial, because you don't get the shipping advanced scoring that everyone else gets when they take those tiles. It's only 4 points. It's funny, I was actually saying in the Discord earlier today that I wish Fakirs had some ability to score around the ship tiles and things like that, because I feel like it's one of the things that holds them back, and that town is very much a part of that.
And I think they actually do score off ship scoring with the expansion Merchants of the Seas, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still haven't played
So the
it.
hex I'm looking at here now is actually G6. I think it would actually be lovely for Nerdcube, because he'll be able to have a town on the H6, G6, F4, F5 stretch, and then the D9, D10, B8, A10 stretch.
Yeah.
Because at the moment it looks like that D9, D10 stretch is part of one town, but it can't be part of both, unfortunately. But obviously Jekyll wants that hex too.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is interesting from Simon here. So he digs C2 as opposed to either D4, which I was speculating for access to the northwest, or A6 or A7. It would be A7 to get his connection. So I guess he's not that worried about the connection yet. I'm assuming he will still do it this round. And then maybe I guess he's doing C2 because he's speculating of getting a town up there, whereas D4 doesn't really give town capabilities. But that is quite nice for Deep Finesse in the long run if D4 stays yellow.
And he could also just be anticipating that Jekyll's going to want to dig D3, so get some more leech, have some neighbors there, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That would, if Jekyll went through, D3, D2, F2, G1 or something like that, then
Yeah.
Simon just needs a bridge to have a very accessible town up there. And given he doesn't really have any other spots dug out for towns, I mean, I assume he's got to at least be thinking about one somewhere on this southeastern landmass, but he's quite a ways from getting it.
I find it fascinating that, we had all of these temples early for the econ, and we haven't seen a Water 1 take.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Yeah. And that's the cost of having all these temples. You don't really want to have 3 temples out on the board, because it locks in where your sanctuary is. Now, for Deep Finesse, that's not a big deal, because A9 or I4 are right on the edges of the map. So it looks like A9 might be a nice sanctuary location.
Yeah.
And then I3 could be a really cool stronghold location.
Right. So what Deep Finesse has done is, by building the temple on A9, I think he's signaled just what you just said, which is that he'll do sanctuary there, stronghold in the south, and the benefit of doing it that way as opposed to the other way around is he doesn't have to use the bridge to get to C5. Now I guess he could still potentially end up because he assumes that Simon will ultimately take A7 here to connect. Now the one thing is that means he'll need fire 2 because of the placement of that landscape, but he's probably okay with that. And we did finally, right after you brought it up, see the Water 1 rush. So 2 of them have now been taken. I'll scroll down here for a second, by engineers and Fakirs. We knew Jekyll wanted it all along, obviously, as the one person who didn't have Earth 1. Or actually, I guess there's still a copy of Earth 1. I actually didn't realize that. And so, yeah, one copy of Water 2 left.
And the temple for Jekyll was on F6.
Yeah, interesting. So, what we might be seeing now here is her actually pivoting where she's thinking about these big buildings. So, I could see now Sanctuary F6, and she's thinking she builds a stronghold ultimately in that D3 to C1 or B1 stretch. I mean, we might have to start thinking about how many structures she has, given how many she's got on the board here. But let's see.
It would
how many
almost
would
be a
that
four-town game. I mean, I just love four-town games. It's like catnip to me.
Well, and the fact that she
I'm
hasn't
not
turned
sure
the
we'll see
center
it.
thing into the center area into a town yet does indicate that she's potentially eyeing that. We'll see where she builds these TPs, but it does mean she hasn't claimed the 2 key town, which we thought she would.
Yeah. And we would. I was totally wrong on the double dig call for Jekyll. I mean, the upping ship got her access to 2 hexes anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, admittedly, I also was not looking at going in that direction. I'll admit I'm still a little bit surprised. F6 and G8 is nice down there. I think if I were in her position, I might have wanted D3 and A6 more, but
Well, even G6 is a denial for mermaids.
yes, true. Well, and now after we talked about that, we do see her go ahead and build the TP in the middle for a town. Now that doesn't preclude 4 towns in a game with landscapes, and she's certainly been building at a pace such that getting all those structures out is possible. She does take the 2 key town, and is now comfortably in the lead on 2 cults. So continuing to look very, very good, other than the fact that she's 29 points behind, or sorry, now 28 points behind Deep Finesse.
Yeah, she's got 6 points still incoming this round with her pass.
Yep.
The awkward thing here with the 2 key town is it's 1 step away from an extra dig on air. So is it worth taking the priest power action just for a single bump in air for an extra dig? She does need a lot of digs.
Yeah, I would think not.
Although she does have 12 power incoming, so cycling the power is not necessarily that bad.
Yeah, I think much more likely though those power just become coins to build another TP this round.
Right.
Would be my guess, but
Although the TP would kill a worker income.
true. Trade-offs. Terra
Yeah.
Mystica is a game of trade-offs, guys. So Deep Finesse passed first again. I think this is he's passed first quite a number of times. I mean, I guess with Fakirs that makes sense. They do tend to fewer actions. Passed on to the 6 coin tile as opposed to, I guess, the big building tile. It makes sense. No one really wants to build big buildings. And as we speculated at the very beginning of the game, no big buildings have been built, and so I think we may see a huge rush of them at the end of the game, which will be fun to watch.
And if you're having to build 2 big buildings in the last round, like, that's at least 12 coins for engineers. For everyone else, it's 14 or 16 coins. They're going to need to stockpile a lot of coins just for 2 structures.
Yeah. Although I assume almost every faction will end next round with 4 TPs on the board, so that gets
4
you
TPs out.
Yeah, halfway there at least. Plus all the fire ones that are in the game. And Jekyll does just go for further TP. And you pointed this out at the beginning of the game, or in round 1, but the fact that she's got 14 power production and is actually able to gain it all in round 4 is incredible. The benefit of getting all that leech early and not having to burn.
Yeah, so cool. I really do like Air 2 NGs in the right circumstances. Especially when there's more scoring in the game with fire and ice, when you haven't blown the power. Yeah, it's really, really cool. So let's break down these pass tiles coming up. So Deep Finesse is passed on to 6 coins, which is just super helpful for his economy. We see the big building tile there, and it's not often that you see it collecting coins, but do people actually want that before the last round?
I mean, no one really wants it this round. Everyone. Jekyll would probably be the most likely, as she's the only one who's even marginally short on workers. But everyone obviously would ideally get it in the last round. It looks like Jekyll's, unless she takes a priest to stall here, which wouldn't, there's definitely arguments for doing that. But unless she does that, then Nerdcube's probably going to get the dwelling tile, which is a pretty nice place to be. In round 5. One thing we didn't mention with Deep Finesse 2 is he didn't build. Well, he built 1 TP this round so he could build a temple, but he still has 4 TPs on his faction board for this upcoming round. So he should have a really nice scoring round, whereas all the other factions at least have 1 out on the map. Just fewer sort of unrealized points is the term that I like to use.
Yeah, totally. And we see that, Deep Finesse is going to be able to take the first power action. And, normally in round 5, that's coins. Is there a world where he actually wants the dig?
Maybe. I mean, it's hard for me to see him taking single dig.
Yeah.
But I don't know where double dig would go. Unless
Totally.
maybe A7?
A7 to not require fire 2.
Require fire 2, that could be the one. It would still then require, well, if A6 gets taken, it wouldn't require an expensive TP. So that could potentially make sense. I mean, or if he wanted to jump to like F2 or something, wouldn't be completely unreasonable, but I'd be pretty surprised. I mean, I guess he's 1 worker short of building 4 TPs this round, so maybe he settles for 3 and 1 dwelling.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, I5 looks like a great place for him to put one of his TPs this round. It would form the town with the I3 and I5. Get him a little bit more econ going into round 6.
Yeah. And so Jekyll passed onto the big building tile after all, so thinking she needed the workers, or it was just the best option. And then halflings passed back onto the ship tile. So we haven't talked about halflings too much for a while. They've just been greeting points this game, right? They upgraded they double econ so they could upgrade shipping. They scored 9 on the shipping pass tile after round 2. They just scored, I think, 7 or 8. How many? 7 on the dwelling pass tile. They're now going to score 9 on the shipping pass tile again. So they haven't even done that many digs. I mean, just a couple digs in the whole game. But are now in position to build a few TPs this round. They should be able to get a town in the upper, the northwest. God, my cardinal directions have been just off today. The northwest, potentially maybe another one, and can compete on this if they want to. Compete on this sanctuary stronghold distance. It'll be quite expensive for them to do so, but certainly in play. And it's an interesting strategy to wonder if they can just greed enough points here to overcome stronger footprints, I would say, is the way I'd put it for some of the other factions.
Totally right. And I missed the fact that Deep Finesse had an air spade incoming, so surely we're going to see the coins take.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call. And mermaids do go ahead and do G6. Nice that lasted for them, and so now Nerdcube has a nice 3 towns set up here. Now, all of a sudden, one thing to think about is there is a tiny bit of bridge pressure. Especially if engineers take the bridge power action as opposed to using their faction ability, because Simon could potentially want one up here in the northeast. The mermaids could want one from F3 to D5 to make that into a town without having to double dig. And even the fakirs, if, Deep Finesse, I certainly wouldn't put it past him to... did I just get my cardinal directions wrong deranged? Sorry. I wouldn't put it past Deep Finesse to take one as a block. So that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on.
Jekyll has her turn with 11 power in bowl 3. Just love to see it in round 5. It doesn't get old. And the hex that I'm wondering about now is this A7 hex. Halfling Simon really, really needs that hex, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
We're gonna see.
Well, I mean, theoretically, he could take A6 too, but I'd be pretty surprised if it's strictly dominated from a spade perspective right now, but I'd be pretty surprised if Simon doesn't build one of those 2 hexes right now. Because otherwise they might be gone.
And A7 gives Deep Finesse a neighbor, so it helps out Deep Finesse and it helps out Jekyll. So I actually think the better play might be A6. It does cost 1 more worker, but it denies Deep Finesse a neighbor, and it denies, it makes a town very hard for engineers there.
Right, engineers.
Actually, no, they can't put a sanctuary there. There's no way they can put a sanctuary there. They've already got their.
They've already got their temples. Yeah, so they'd have to double dig A4 or triple dig A3, which is pretty ugly. Interesting. One thing too that I thought about for engineers is if. Oh, I guess it doesn't work. Never mind. I was gonna say if they could get to G3, they could use their landscape, but it doesn't work that way because it has to be a non-gray for them to put the landscape on. So we may not see the landscape from engineers, at least not for its actual function.
Yeah, and I can see a world where if halflings are going to be building their stronghold this game, then that G3 hex is easily just chewed up by the stronghold digs, or even something like D3 where they wouldn't need to do the bridge for the A2 town. They could just do D3, D4 and have like a really long dwelling town with 1 TP on D4. It could be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We might see the famed driller from the halflings. And one thing I just thought about too, as we were talking about landscapes, is that I was talking about the potential need for Nerdcube to have a bridge F3 to D5. He doesn't actually need that with the landscape. Now, F3 and D5 also both don't have neighbors, so he could require, an expensive TP upgrade, and or G4 is a pretty likely sanctuary location, so. He might be okay with the landscape. And Simon is having a very think here, maybe considering, and he does go for A7 over A6.
Merciful Simon. Merciful Simon.
Yeah, I mean, he does have quite high worker needs coming up, right? So maybe he calculated out that 1 worker is actually really relevant to him, whether it's building some TPs this round or if he does try to contend on the big building tile. I mean, the interesting thing here with these big buildings is that, if everyone goes for it, as we said at the beginning, someone is not getting a return on their investment. In fact, I would even say that getting 6 points at this point for a couple of these factions probably wouldn't be worth it. So I think they really need to balance what those resources are going to do for them versus the potential points that they can get on the on that scoring tile.
Yeah, so we might see a really dynamic round 6 where people are posturing and playing a game of chicken, throwing priester cults just to not reveal their hand, things like that.
For sure.
And we see that, Jekyll gets away with this coins take. So Deep Finesse, I predicted that he would take coins. He didn't. He built I5, I think, his first action.
Yep.
Jekyll took coins and decided not to secure A6 and leave it there vulnerable. And it pays off for Jekyll. She's got to be happy with that. She gets coins. She could even take bridge this round as well. It's a really, really nice play. Although I think, she might, if she looks back on the VOD, she might consider maybe the coins play was a bit greedy.
Yeah.
I think the range was calling that out in the chat, but it paid off this time.
Yeah, especially since this round, at least, I'm not sure she really needed those extra 3 coins. I mean, maybe, but I totally understand the play from Deep Finesse. Wow, and she still doesn't build A6. I mean, I guess now that Simon did A7, he's not going to do A6, but I understand the play from Deep Finesse, because if he does take coins, takes away the incentive for Jekyll to do it, then she could easily have blown up I5 once it got Colt spaded to yellow. So, which would have given her the potential for a sanctuary town down there, completely ended Deep Finesse's town. So, I understand why he went for that.
And what I like about this, so she has revealed her hand with the Sanctuary, but, you know, that information was already out there. She already did have the 3 temples on the board. She's on the Sanctuary Stronghold scoring tile, and she just picked up a round 5 copy of Earth 1 with 4 dwellings sitting there on her board. I love to see this.
Yeah.
Really, really cool.
Yeah, I think that's really, really cool. I mean, she could have also taken... I mean, she'll get more with Earth 1, obviously, but even Air 1 in that scenario would have been worth more points than waiting to build the big building till the next round, obviously, assuming that you don't have huge opportunity costs. She does need... I mean, I guess the spades really aren't under contention, right? So if she wants to build a bunch of dwellings this round, she's going to build A6, and then I assume we're going to get a double dig of F7 plus...
F7, E2.
Yeah.
Although, actually, E2...
no, maybe not
doesn't
E2.
look like it's part of a town.
Yeah, maybe D3.
Yeah.
D3 is probably more likely. Especially since she's now got enough neighbors in that northern town that she doesn't need the stronghold there to build the town, even without an expensive TP. So she might try to find a way to get the stronghold outside of a town over on, like, D2 or something, which is a little bit longer on the distance than B4.
Right.
And mermaids are going to end up with, we can start counting the distance here. So mermaids are going to end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, assuming they go G4 and A10, which I don't really think they can improve much on that unless he tries to get down to H2, which seems unlikely. They actually can't because he's got 3 temples. So yeah, so mermaids is maxing that scoring out at 10. So if Jekyll... And B4 is only 9. So if she's able to get to D3 or D2, it's actually worth quite a number of points relative to mermaids. Yeah, here we go.
Is this the landscape? No, just a dwelling.
Just a dwelling.
Oh, we might see landscape on F7, maybe. Just as the extra structure. No.
Well, you can't build both the landscape and the dwelling at the same time.
Ah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
So, yeah, I mean, we may not see that. It actually does surprise me a little bit that we didn't see the landscape on one of those, if only because I guess the issue is now maybe she's still thinking about a town. But she didn't take Fire 2, so I guess she still could with she has one more temple available now. But I don't think there's enough structures for 4 towns at this point.
So let's talk about NerdCube's
Maybe.
game here. He's sitting on 33 points. So that's not super high points, though he is on the dwelling scoring tile. It looks like these 3 towns are going to be trivial, super easy for him to do this round. But what else is he going to do? He's got a spade incoming. I'm not sure where I see that going. Maybe something like G9, just as a network play. Although he would need to up his shipping 1 more to be able to have access to that.
Yeah. Or something like
A3.
Yeah, or D11. He's got some places he can throw it if he just wants something to build. But I agree, yeah, I mean, he may just have a little trouble. He's got 2 more TPs to build this round. And some dwellings, and yeah, it's almost like he's maxing out his footprint a little early, and I'm just not sure he's grabbed enough points. He doesn't. Yeah, no one's taken Air 1 yet.
Yeah, and we have a little bit of posturing, I think, here for the pass tiles.
Certainly.
Because everyone's going to want to get onto one of those scoring pass tiles, and NerdCube as mermaids Fire 1 Mermaids has still not yet grabbed the ship scoring tile, I believe. Someone might correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. And they usually like to try and abuse that shipping tile, but it's been halflings who have been making the most of that tile more than mermaids.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, halflings had the need for the shipping. I mean, that's the thing is the thing with mermaids is they have the ability to spam that, but on some of these maps like this one and base 2, there's just often not the need to actually upgrade your shipping a ton, and so doing it just for the points is pretty questionable, and so it doesn't shock me terribly here.
Will we see Nerdcube town up this round? H6 TP or G6 TP might be able to help him to stall a little bit longer. There's a priest town available.
Yeah, priest town, or I mean, he's got
and halflings, so he should be able to get onto that.
Well, halflings can keep single digging things though if he really wants to stall. So he could last quite a while. I mean, one thing that would be kind of nice for Nerdcube here would be if he can get, well, I was going to say if he get another step on water, but actually I'm not sure he needs the spade, so maybe it doesn't matter. I wonder if Nerdcube has, is there any way he can get 4 towns out of this weird situation? I don't think so. Not in a way that would be worth it, especially given the big buildings he's got to build next round. So, yeah, I don't know. It does certainly seem like
it would have to be like a triple dig on D4.
Yeah, that's pretty
and
ugly.
A bridge to B3, and then like the sanctuary and landscape near G4 F3. It would be quite funny, but with having to build, as you said, with having to build both the stronghold and the next round, might not be worthwhile.
Yeah, that's
or even doable.
I don't think that's happening. So I do think we'll see a town from Nerdcube this round though, on in the middle there. But it does seem like all the players are, I think all of their primary focus is on passing, or therefore stalling so that they can pass. And as expected, the cults are relatively low. We do have all the priest spots getting pretty full here. We've only got 2 spots on Earth left, and yet no one's maxed out a cult. Because we don't have any factions that have any other ways to get cults. No one took Water 2 or anything like that. So, but at the same time, this is reasonably spread out. So I actually don't know if we're going to see a ton of late game cult jockeying. I guess there are a lot of priests coming in, so maybe we will.
Yeah, it is. You're totally right. It is fascinating to see. There's only 2 priest spots left, and the highest that any faction is on any cult is 8 on Earth.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy. And and Derange has called out that there's the cult set tile.
Oh, right. So we've got a really low game. Yeah, so Nerdcube did build a TP and has the ability to town now. And so it seems like he's deciding whether or not he wants to do that now. He also could wait until his next action. One of the weird things, I'm pretty sure this is the case on BGA, someone will correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, but I do think one of the weird things on BGA is that you cannot connect and then pass as one action. Connect an already built town and then pass, which is something you can do on Snellman. So Nerdcube probably had to think a little bit more about whether or not he wanted to do it now, in the chance that he thought there's a chance he could pass next round. Because sometimes what happens in these stall battles, you can on BGA, Rumble Bomb? Okay. I've just never done it. One thing that happens in these stall battles a lot is someone realizes they're going to lose and then goes ahead and passes earlier than even with some actions left, because there's no reason in continuing. There may not be a reason in continuing to stall, especially if they're suboptimal actions.
Right. A few more things here. We see that Fakirs have towned up, but they didn't take Range Town. They didn't take Coin Town. They took a Worker Town. So that probably just allows them to build another TP. And we also saw Simon take a 4 for 3 in round 5. Um, Obviously wants to just use that power as coins, I imagine.
Yeah, I would imagine. It seems like my whole musing about the mermaids, at least according to people in chat, was just completely wrong. So everyone can
It's all good.
everyone can ignore that. I just, for some reason, I always I didn't, I noticed that you, I feel like I didn't notice the option to do it before you took your action normally.
I think the weird part about it now that you mention it, is that I think you pass and then you form the town. I don't think you can form the town then pass. Like, I think it gives you the option after having passed.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the chat will definitely correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
but I
we're-
think it's you go pass,
now we're both
and
getting
then it
corrected.
says you want to form a town. Yeah.
After
and
everything,
after
yeah.
everything.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so okay, so it's not so much that you can do it while you pass, but you couldn't, for example, click on the bottom right in Tableau. Okay, so there is some way to do it. Interesting. It's just maybe not as obvious. Yeah, because like what you want to be able to do is, for example, pass, take a worker town, and then build a TP that you didn't have the workers for, or something like that. That nice mermaid flexibility. So one thing to think about here is, like, do we think Simon is gonna be going for this Sanctuary Stronghold distance? I'm not sure he is, because I just don't know if he's gonna have enough resources.
It looks dicey, doesn't it?
Yeah, because the problem is, if either A2 or C2 was a temple, I'd feel a lot better about it. But having to go all the way up through a temple with one of those, and then also, for example, build I9, that's just a lot.
And the other thing here to consider is that they're all wanting to stall, right? But if Simon stalls too late, then and Jekyll passes before him, she could just take the bridge away, bridge between F6 and G8. Yes, Simon probably would still be able to form this town, C2, B2, A1, and maybe with their stronghold they'll be able to dig D2 or something like that. But it's a lot of digs, considering they also probably want to dig G3 if they're putting their sanctuary there.
Yeah,
it's a tough one. I don't even know if building the sanctuary there is worthwhile. What's the distance on that? I think you've already counted that, right? H4 to A2.
From that, it's only
5, 6. Not enough.
7. Yeah, that's probably not scoring any points. They might anyways, just because of a town.
And hitting the track.
And having and the track too. I actually think in that case, what you'd more likely see is you'd see him build the sanctuary and not the stronghold, because he could easily build a stronghold up top there, build the town up top there without a stronghold.
Yeah.
Even without the bridge.
Yeah. The one thing that I like about the stronghold is it allows them to get the driller out, and then they are looking quite competitive on just standard network, especially if they do get that structure out. If they don't get that structure out, then he's gone to all this trouble to connect, to get 3 shipping. So not building the driller would be a real shame. Yeah,
so I scrolled down here for a second to look at the faction boards in terms of how many structures people have left, and we're all pretty similar. Everyone has the sanctuary and the stronghold, except for engineers who have built the sanctuary, and then 3 or 4 other structures on the bottom. So engineers definitely have a leg up, but for second and third here, it's close, and so there very well might be trade-offs to be made in terms of this competing on Sanctuary Stronghold versus competing on Network, which obviously have the same scoring breakdown. I have a feeling that with this and into the last rounds, we might see some quite long thinks.
Yeah. Yep. Brace yourselves.
Yeah. We're going to be here for a while, kids.
So how's your Tuesday going, Matt? It's Wednesday here in New Zealand. So we're in the future.
My Tuesday's great. I'm in California, and so it's the sun's just starting to go down. But it's great. I've got to have this and then my Tuesday game right after it is a really fun back-to-back leading into this is American Thanksgiving week, and so tomorrow is pretty much a wash day for work before the holiday on Thursday. So it's nice to be celebrating some gaming into a very long weekend.
So cool. I wonder if casting this game will hinder or help your next play. I find that casting can burn the brain because you're considering what everyone is doing, you know,
Yeah.
and trying to be like vaguely entertaining, vaguely compelling
Yeah,
at the same time.
I'll probably try to take the half hour in between and go, drink some coffee and take a walk or
Yeah,
definitely
clear your head.
not look at screens. So Simon's
so Simon, I
almost
think,
down
is considering.
on his
Yeah.
clock here, and Nerdcube ran his down to 7 seconds. Deep Finesse here is down to, he'd have to take a power action at this point to avoid passing, which, if he thinks it's enough, probably would. Jekyll really only has room for one more action with the priest that she's got in hand. Nerdcube just built a TP, taking advantage of the TP scoring, but now is completely out. So Nerdcube's next action will be passing.
Unless he founds the town.
Unless he found we were just talking about that. Back to that.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Deranged asked about the range towns, and there are still two range towns left. Although, as we were talking about earlier, I don't think the Fakirs will actually need one or want to take one this round. He's got connection via 2 range through E3 to H7,
Stronghold.
and the strongholds, which I anticipate we're going to see on I3. Will cover that. And his other 2 open yellows are within range with 2. Although, I mean, remains to be seen if they don't get blocked. But so Deep Finesse does go ahead and take some workers here. Gives him the ability to build another TP, so even one more action on the stall battles. Jekyll uses her priest as a worker and builds another TP, so we're getting down to it now. So
Simon definitely initiated the stall war on the C1 dig. Just turning it blue, like 1 hex closer towards getting to brown.
Yep. Absolutely.
And he's got plenty of power to convert into workers if he needs to, although I imagine he wants that to be coins, so he will be reluctant to do that. He'll use his workers first, I think.
I think he's going to be fine because... Oh, well, maybe not, because what's going to happen here is Nerdcube's going to pass, and then Deep Finesse is going to pass on to Nerdcube's tile, and then all of a sudden we're going to be back to not having any free ones. So Simon's going to have to take one more action, and Jekyll's going to be the one who loses out here. Which is pretty painful, given she really needs to make up some points.
Deep Finesse. We just got to talk about this player a little bit. The Terra Mystica prodigy. He's sitting here with 95 points, having a monstrous game. He's got 23 points on the next highest points total. Of course, there are a lot of in-game points incoming, but it's looking like he's going to score some in-game points. He's winning the fire cult. I like his chances for the Sash scoring win, or at least second place.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to finish with 11.
It's a monstrous game.
He's going to finish with 11 on Sanctuary Stronghold, which is one more than Nerdcube's going to finish with, assuming we don't see anything completely unexpected, which could be enough for the win. Jekyll, if she is able to get over to D2 for the Stronghold, would be also 11, so that would be a tie. But so yeah, he's going to get 15 or 18 points on that. In terms of network, he's going to score some points there. He's winning Fire Cult. Obviously... Oh, now that is interesting. Deep Finesse went ahead and, after all of that stalling, had the opportunity to build a TP and passed onto the spade tile.
And isn't that so annoying for the other players? You're like, yes, I've outstalled someone. Oh no, they were on the story pass tile, you know? It's so gutting.
Well,
he doesn't make a scoring pass tile available.
yeah, this is really interesting.
Is it for the bridge and not needing to fire to? Take the bridge away from
Potentially?
engineers. Halflings make their lives a little bit harder. Both of them can still form the town without it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that, or it could just be for more coins. I mean, he does need, just for the two big buildings, he needs 16 coins.
16 coins, yep.
And then on top of that, presumably wants to build a dwelling or two. So I think he must have done the calculation that, but man, that is, after all of that.
And the spade is really fun too, because it gives him another flight, or potentially 2 flights if he wants to stagger his priests.
Right, he does have to assume
something like H9 or probably H9.
H9, maybe B1 or A1 if halflings aren't careful.
Yeah.
I mean, he does have to probably assume that either at least one of D4 or A4 is not going to last for him to just very nicely jump onto, especially if network gets competitive. So interesting. We'll see how it pays off for him. And also the thing is, with him passing first, he knew that someone else was also going to have to then pass on to a non-pass tile. So Jekyll still lost out, as we said, and had to pass on to the priest tile. And so only mermaids and halflings ended up on scoring tiles. And halflings do end up on the big building tile, which now really gives them that much more incentive to, after our speculation that maybe they wouldn't, go ahead and build both big buildings. So, as we've said from the very beginning of the game, we're in for a doozy of around 6, folks.
And I wonder if they've got a spade to use here. I wonder if they turn H9 grey so they get a neighbor on I9 for the sash distance.
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Maybe it's a bit too kingmaker. I'm not sure. But we see the D2 dig instead.
Denies D2.
Yeah.
Wow. That could be a network thing. Maybe Halflings thinks that if he can deny enough spaces to Jekyll, that he could actually tie or beat her on regular network. Because she now only has access to one gray left, which is G1 once she gets to 3 shipping. So Deep Finesse does open with the coins, and so expect that we're going to see the 2 big buildings, probably a worker town from him, and then does he have 2 dwellings available? Yeah, 2 dwellings. So that's pretty strong for Deep Finesse.
And does Jekyll want the bridge here? She doesn't have an embarrassment of workers, yeah. So she does take the bridge, which is good. She's going to be scoring every bridge that she's got with the stronghold. So it feels like a nice play. Take it away from Simon, although I imagine that Simon needs to use every single power that he's got as coins. We'll see.
Yeah.
Here comes the stronghold.
Yeah.
And...
So there's the stronghold. Now what's interesting is what he does with these spades. Yeah.
G3?
I actually thought that might happen. So it's clear he's going for both big buildings and both towns, so he should score a good number of points there, even if he ends up not scoring any Sanctuary Stronghold points.
Yeah, I mean, building both big buildings this round, being on the big building tile, is 18 points. It's not bad, as well as the points that are going to come in from the towns.
Right.
And also the other thing about the Halfling Stronghold, it is very hated, but it's a 3-point building as well. So, it's really a 21 points worth of big buildings.
Yeah. What's interesting is he did not put the driller down as part of that stronghold transformations, which I guess makes sense because he wanted to build on G3 with a dwelling so that he could build a TP there for a normal town. Although, does he really have enough workers for that? I feel like he might end up wanting Fire 2 anyways.
Was this something about trying to not let Nerdcube get G3? I imagine Nerdcube would have wanted to double dig G3 anyway. It didn't matter that much to him.
No.
Or cares? Yeah, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I guess he doesn't really need the driller's actual ability very much. Would have potentially saved him 1 worker on B1 or D2. if he put it on C1, but then, yeah, risks G3. Actually, the bigger risk on G3 might be Fakir sniping it over Mermaids.
Yeah, that's a good call out.
But either way, he went ahead and did it, and it'll be interesting to see now if he goes for Fire 2 or not. I just feel like he has to if he wants both towns. I don't think he's got enough resources otherwise.
Well, what else would he take with his Sanctuary? Year 1, I guess.
Yeah, maybe.
Fire 2 just makes his life so much easier.
Yeah.
Just relax, take Fire 2. Don't have to worry about it. One thing that makes me like irrationally happy is when mermaids build their stronghold and they're on the ship scoring tile. Like, it just makes that terrible building a little bit better, you know?
Yeah.
He knows he's going to be getting that extra 3 points from the ship upgrade, as well as the innate points from upgrading ships.
Absolutely. And NerdCube now is doing a little bit of town contemplation. And he goes with a coin town, which I think makes sense. He's figured out that getting coins so he can advance his ship even further makes the most sense from a points perspective. It does leave some of the nicer towns for others, although everyone is trying to build a decent amount this round. So even though it's round 6, it might not be purely all the high point towns going flying off the rack.
He's looking very worker poor. He hasn't taken Fire 2, so this last town is really going to take it out of him. Although I assume that he could just, Sanctuary for Fire 2. Still would need to build like a trading post on F3, or else chuck his landscape down, which is probably what he would end up doing between F3 and D5.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the landscape, assuming that the single spade action doesn't get taken, I assume the landscape would be his preferred approach here. We'll see. So Jekyll goes ahead and digs. She does double dig for G7 and for H9. So it'll be interesting to see if she actually builds on H9. I mean, for network competition purposes, she probably will want to, although, as we expressed, that's really nice for Simon. Although, actually, no, it doesn't matter, because Simon, we already know now, has signaled he's going to build his Sanctuary on H4 and the Stronghold up where it already is. So I guess at this point, Jekyll realized it doesn't actually matter.
And it's probably a little bit too late to pivot. Like, I would definitely consider pivoting here to building that Sanctuary. If you had a little bit more resources, because that's a guaranteed 18 points that he's not getting, which ends up being more than a town. But I don't think he's got the resources to be able to do that.
No, he would need 8 workers and 14 coins, which he's actually got the 8 workers, but he does not have 14 coins to go with it.
And Jekyll declines the build anyway.
Yeah, well, she put this. It was a double dig, and she put the Sanctuary on the landscape on G7. So we're getting down to it here. I don't know what your opinions on math are. We could probably start trying to do some adding if we wanted to, but I'm not sure I want to.
I don't think it makes for the most fun viewing experience. I imagine people in the I'm just looking at Jekyll's resources being engineers, and 14 coins is a lot of coins for them. She's still just got a lot of stuff in hand. So I imagine that some of those, I imagine that 2 of those workers will end up just being a bridge for 3 points, C4 to A5 or something like that. Or can she try to get all of her structures out? I don't know if she can get all of her structures out. I imagine she's just going to end with 1 temple.
And I don't think she needs to. I think that would be, with just the temple on the board, would be 17 on network. And I think that's going to be enough to win.
It should be enough, right?
To win, because everyone else has invested in big buildings this round, so we didn't see anyone abandon the Sash scoring to go for network. So I think she's going to be good there. Now, one thing that will be interesting is whether or not she goes for does she have enough to build the Stronghold on D3? I don't think so, because I think she doesn't have enough TPs. Yeah, because she's already got 4 TPs on the board. So that means she is going to have to build the stronghold on D4 instead of D3, which means she finishes with a distance of 9, which is only going to get her 3rd on Sosh scoring. So only 6 points there, which is a bit of a bummer given the spread that she got. It's going to have finished really close. It's going to be Engineers 9, Mermaids 10, Fakirs 11. Yeah, Patrick of the Isles just put that in the chat.
Yeah, really close margin. Totally right. And we see the second Fakir's worker town. I don't know if I've ever seen it before. It's pretty cool because, he hasn't needed the coins. He's had the landscape out. He's used his Air 2 nicely to secure a few coins actions. And so workers has been the thing that he wants more of.
Absolutely. And we'll see. I mean, he can build the stronghold and two dwellings here pretty safely. Which I think is what we'll see. I don't know if he's going to have quite enough for another TP, although it's not like it's that valuable to him. NerdQ did go ahead and build the landscape right where you said, so
yeah.
I think we'll probably now see the sanctuary for Fire 2. I mean, I guess we could see the sanctuary and then still a temple, but I'd imagine he wants to hold on to those priests for ship increases.
Well, he could sanctuary and then upgrade F3, right, into a TP.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I said temple. I meant TP, but
yeah.
But it would eat all his
coins,
all his priests.
Yeah.
Which,
I see.
Yeah, for given he's on ship scoring tile, I imagine he wants to upgrade shipping. Even though sadly,
well, the other consideration with the sanctuary is, these cults are wide open. Is something like Air 3 going to be more worthwhile? Air 3 into, potentially taking the one cult step town.
One step, yeah. Although interestingly,
is that good for anyone?
Jekyll's got 3 priests there that she doesn't really have a lot to do with. I mean, she could advance her ship potentially. She might maybe use them as otherwise use them as workers, but I think she could lock down air pretty quickly if she perceived that it was under threat.
Right.
Yeah, despite all these priests, I don't know how much jockeying we're really going to get. Simon did go ahead and take Fire 2 as we thought and took a coin town, so he now has enough structures enough resources to go ahead and build his town. Now the one thing that's interesting here is he did A1 is under threat from Fakirs, and so if Deep Finesse is feeling a little nasty, he could he could fly and dig build with that bonus spade on A1, which would make this a little tricky for Simon. Does he have enough? He does have enough.
He just has enough.
He just has enough with the driller. He'd have to put the driller down. Yeah. So we'll see if that happens.
You'd have something like 2 coins left or 1 coin left or something.
Yeah, exactly. 1 coin. Yeah, 1 coin. 1 coin and a power. Oh, good point. Jim just pointed out that Fakirs still only have 1 range for now because they haven't built that stronghold yet. So he can't actually get to A1 just yet. He will very shortly.
Yep, and now here's the 2 range.
There it is.
Simon doesn't have 2 dwellings anyway. Good point. So he will need to use the driller.
Yeah, he's going to use the driller. Yep. The driller, everyone. So it does look like Simon is going to come up a bit short here. Even with another town, he's behind Deep Finesse in almost every aspect of endgame scoring. They might end up the same on network. They end up the same on network. But he's behind him in quite a bit in Sosh. And behind him in well, actually Colts is pretty close. But but Deep Finesse still has 8 points of flights left. So
And it's quite surprising to see a two temple opening halflings who don't win any cults, and with not really any culty factions in the game. They
Yeah.
just used all of their priests early game. They needed to for the shipping and for the dig advances. So at best they're getting something like 10 points on the cults, and maybe a little bit more, 12.
8, yeah, 9,
Yeah.
10, probably 10. If you assume engineers nip them on fire.
Yeah.
Jekyll still has one town coming in. She's going to win network. And as we said, third on Sosh. And then a pretty decent cult presence, but without a pass tile, I'm not sure it's going to be enough to make up this points gap. I mean, she's 39 behind Deep Finesse right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair call. So, what does the chat think? Who does everyone think is winning this game? Don't tell us how many points they're going to be getting, but who's going to win? I'm saying I think Fakir's. I think
Yeah.
we're going to have the 3-peat for Deep Finesse.
Yeah, it looks like Deep Finesse has it. Yeah. Nerdcube didn't go for Fire 2 after all. He went for Arrow 1, which means he's going to use those priests for that TP. He's got one more town, but it's not enough. He's not winning Network or Sosh. He's kind of in the middle on both.
I guess he could take a ship town. Is ship town better than a priest town? Ship town is worth
Shiptown's
7, 10. It's worth 10 points.
Yeah.
So 11 point would just be better.
Yep. So we're winding down here. Not quite as long of a round 6 as I was worried about. I guess everyone spent those big buildings eat so many resources so quickly. But this has been fun. I mean, Deep Finesse, I think as Fakir is one of the key things is just not getting messed with, and he didn't, right? He secured B7, which was the one thing that was under a little bit of threat early, found the clever way to connect through E3, which no one else really wanted, and then was just able to kind of build around and no one took yellow hexes and just took the points when they came, right?
Yeah, and this was a game where halflings and Fakirs were less antagonistic towards each other than we would have expected, right? They kind of just said, yep, we'll have a handshake, you go over there, you take northwest, I'll take northeast. And they just happily went about their own things. It was only a little bit of competition on H3, E1 and D8, C5 area, but not as much as I would have expected.
Yeah. And I think Nerdcube, I even going back, I still don't necessarily think that the price he paid for Mermaids was bad. I think his issue was he just didn't get quite enough of a snowball early. We talked about how he missed the coins action in round 2 by just a couple power. I think that hurt him a lot. Losing C4 to engineers was a big loss. Forced him to do that double hard dig, or as a single spade plus hard dig on F4, which was quite an expensive way to connect. And even though he was able to get 3 towns, I just think he didn't find enough points along the way.
Yeah, that early play by Jekyll to dig E4 and deny the leech on F5 for Mermaids ended up, I think it was quite a big deal for Nerdcube. And the play that I want to ask about is Jekyll, because we were talking about how I think she played a beautiful game, how explosive her game was. She got that middle town, she secured 2-key town. It looks like she's going to be winning 2 cults, so she's still very well in it. But maybe just missed out on a few pass tiles for points. Hasn't quite been able to tick over those points throughout the middle stages of the game.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
I think that's right. I mean, I remember at one point she had the ship tile for, I think, a 6-point pass. But other than that, I think that might have been it. She just didn't get the ship or the dwelling tile through the middle. Doesn't have one in the last game. Ended up on the big building tile. The round before was ideal, and even though, as we said, once she was on it, building the sanctuary for Earth 1 was the right play. But not as optimal as if she'd been able to get on it in round 5. Or sorry, at the end of round 5. And the one thing about that leech, right? She got so much leech early, which enabled all of the early expansion, but that leech does cost points, and she didn't find quite enough ways to get it back. So she does have.
And
she's
it wasn't
gonna get 6
really
points.
tricky.
She's going to get 6 passing points for the bridges here. So I mean, I think she's still going to be really close. But I think Deep Finesse has got it.
Yeah, and it was a really tricky track to play, as we said. It was like trading post rounds back to back into big building rounds. Towns in round 1. So the track wasn't feeling too generous today. It wasn't offering too many points to these players.
Right.
So they had to kind of figure out creative ways to score. And they all sort of said at the start of the game, no, we're just going to grab economy and we'll figure out ways to score later on, which was quite fun to see. I love these high-level tables where, because around my ELO, everyone just rushes Earth 1. And I've just become a player who ignores Earth 1, 80% of my games, just because I can't be bothered, farting around with this race for Earth 1 that everyone madly goes for. But it's really, refreshing to see these games where no one takes it round 1.
Yeah.
I quite like it.
It is interesting. I wonder if Jekyll had. I'd have to look back and see if there was a good spot. But if there was an opportunity for her to take Earth 1, not in round 1, but a little bit earlier, because I do feel like that was missing a lot of. That was a lot of the place where she missed points, and it was a relatively low scoring track. And I mean, I know you throw in the extra points from the Sosh tile, and everyone it makes economy more appealing in general, but it was a pretty low scoring game. We said most of the points were sitting on the bonus tiles and obviously the favorite tiles, and so if you don't get those, right, she had little bonus tiles and late favorite tiles that it just became too big of a gap, especially with the Fakir's inherent scoring. I mean, Deep Finesse scored what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10 flights. I mean, that's a lot of points.
That's right. And the Sash tile was really not a points tile this game. It was just a 2-worker tile. Right. I think it only gave out 4 points in round 5, and it's going to give out 8 points this round. So only giving out 12 points. This is usually like the most popular tile throughout round 1 to round 6. On average, I'd say it's the tile that's most loved throughout the course of the game. Of course, Spades are maybe better in the early stages, but Sash is always great. And it's just funny to see a game where it's pretty much just a 2-worker tile instead of a means to get points.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about how this game would have been so different if there was even one faction that was interested in building a big building early, because we had a big building event in round 2, and so if any faction, which is probably the majority of the ones that, excluding the ones we've got here, are interested in building either a sanctuary or a stronghold within the first couple rounds, it completely changes the dynamics around that tile. It completely changes the dynamics around the Sosh scoring in the long run. So that could have changed things quite a lot. Now, Jekyll did just make a nice move here. She did throw down that temple that we thought she might forego in order to take Fire 3 and pass Deep Finesse, which is an 8-point swing. She knows he's the main competition. It's a big swing. She's still got 3 priests, so she can lock it down, assuming he doesn't. Well, he actually can't build. He could build a temple if he used all of his resources, which I don't think he's going to do. So that's a coup for Jekyll there. But still, 40 points back. I'm not sure, even with 3 cults and network win, I'm not sure it's going to be enough, given Deep Finesse does win the Sosh.
Yeah, and I think maybe those last few points that she might need to catch up Deep Finesse comes down to the pass tiles.
Yeah,
she's sitting on priest. I know that Deep Finesse isn't getting any points either with the pass, but that might have done it for her. Like, it's looking like she's going to get 3 first places and a 2nd place on the Colts.
Yep.
Which is pretty crazy for engineers. I've got to say. What's that? It's 28 points on the Colts. She's going to be winning network as well, I think. Don't think other players are going to get to 16. Actually, can Fakirs get it? They've still got
Fakir's can.
spade.
Yeah, he has to
Yeah.
do priest to coin. So you could either, but it's going to be worth it.
Oh, she can
Oh.
get down to. She can sail down to G1.
Oh, right. So yeah, so Deep Finesse noticed that and went ahead and just. Oh yeah, he did. He was able to build that dwelling. So he's at 16. Jack will be 17. Yeah. I mean, Jekyll has a really impressive amount of endgame scoring here. I mean,
That's right.
28 Colts and uh, 18 Network and 6 Sosh, but the what's about to be a 40 something point gap here is probably just a little too much. Given if Deep Finesse had no endgame scoring, then it might be another thing. But he's got a decent amount in his pocket too with second on Network and winning Sosh. So a great battle though.
Yeah, totally. So Ghostly has just said in the chat, just had a look. Nerdcube 14 versus 38 on Deep Finesse. Is that 14 wins out of 38 games, or is that 14 wins for Nerdcube and 38 wins for Deep Finesse?
I would guess
Sure.
I guess
Ghostly
the
will come
former,
back.
but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, probably 14 out of 38. So that would give Deep Finesse 24 wins against Nerdcube. So he's got his number a little bit. We know that Nerdcube is such a strong player. He's an amazing player. Probably the greatest in the board game arena era, you would have to say. He's just been at the highest level for such a long time.
Absolutely, but Deep Finesse seems to have everyone's number these days.
Yeah. Pretty impressive. He just gets what he wants. It seems like, the table often give him what he wants, but I know that it's not that. I know that he puts himself in positions and manipulates the table and other players' decision making in such a way that he's always it's like a choice of two good options. It's never a lose-lose. It's always a win-win for Deep Finesse.
Yeah,
I love the way that he sequences his actions.
Absolutely. And we do finally have the game scoring now. So Matt Johnson saying we should pronounce it Saish because it's sanctuary instead of
I say sash.
sash.
It's just the Kiwi accent, I guess. Yeah, I say sash.
I don't think I've ever said either before this. I kind of picked up on what you were saying,
Sash.
which makes a lot of sense, but Saish, sash.
So Nerdcube has done the math, and he's spoiled the results before we will officially find out. He said congrats to Deep Finesse
Yes.
on the win.
And the win of the league too. So, for those who have been watching for the whole league, we should mention Deep Finesse wins not only this game, but even with one game to go, which is his bye. 3 wins and a second place from his 4 games. Another dominating Premier League win, and hopefully he'll be back next season to take on all challengers.
And we see Jekyll pulls out an amazing game to grab second place. So what does that do for the battle for second in the league? It puts Jekyll on 7. It also puts Nerdcube on 7, and Simon on 3, and Raphael on 2. So next week has some huge implications for second place and the relegation battle.
Absolutely. So Nerdcube and Jekyll both with 7 need to avoid getting last. To if they get last, they're in threat of being relegated, given that 2 folks are getting relegated, because then either Simon or Rafa with a win would jump them, getting to 8 points. So it'll be fun to have the champion sitting on the sidelines while the remaining 4 duke it out to see who gets another crack at the king next season.
Yeah, and I hope we see Deep Finesse casting next week. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that would be excellent. The chat is saying we should get Deep Finesse on. Deep Finesse, if you have access to the caster stream in in the Discord. You're welcome to jump on and join us if you want. This was, by the way, so I'm MattTheLesser. This is for anyone. I know you've been listening to me for a while. And it's Sam SJ the Kiwi is on with me, who casted 2 TMTL games in 1 week. He did the New Zealand game to start the week, and now this game. So, Sam, thanks for joining me. Let me see if
Thanks, it's been a pleasure.
Finesse is joining. I gotta get out of this one. Maybe not.
He's just responding to my message, so we'll see if he can
okay.
jump in.
All right, we'll give it a minute, and then
He's got to head out. He's got to head out today, running a bit late.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Good luck to everyone still playing in America's divisions in a good old 20 minutes for those of you whose brains aren't fried. And we'll see you next time. Sam, we'll have to do this again soon. This was great.
Thanks. It was really a pleasure. Well done, and all the best with your next game, mate.
Absolutely. Thanks. And thanks, everyone. Good to see you. Goodbye.
Bye.